Over the decades, I've gone to workshops, communities, retreats, worked with mentors, and eventually I found masters of healing, masters of sexual tantra, masters of uh, self-mastery, and for a lot of different things and a lot of different aspects of life. And there's a universality between people that no one person is one thing. And you see this a lot when it comes to workshops where people are practicing very primal things like energy work or sexual polarity, which is basically just fancy talk for intentional foreplay. And why would you take, for those that don't know, I'll explain later why there's whole workshops and whole retreats and courses on that. And we'll get to that later. But what I found was that people of all walks of life, people with all sorts of jobs, all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of religions, what it came down to was practicing opening your heart, opening your soul, being seen, having the vulnerability and the courage to be seen, or you were closing. Essentially, you were opening your heart to others and allowing yourself to be seen, or you were sitting on your ass. And I was also very surprised, and I'm continually surprised that spiritual practice is not what I imagined it to be. When I first came into spiritual practice, it wasn't necessarily intentional. I was there because I was in a tremendous amount of pain and wanted to find out what that suffering was about. And what happened was somebody came out on stage, and he didn't look how I thought he would look, and he didn't wear what I thought he would wear. He didn't look spiritual, okay? And growing up as middle class, as bourgeois as I did, I wanted my spiritual teachers to be from India. I wanted them to speak with an accent. I wanted them to look a certain way. I wanted them to talk about a lineage or a heritage. It turned out all that was bullshit. Just hearing the word bullshit come out of the mouth of a spiritual teacher was a shock to me. And what it turned out to be was that everybody from all walks of life, we're still in this place. We're still living in this world. And so the Dalai Lama is going to be on Oprah and on the internet. And there's memes about the Dalai Lama. There's no escaping the everyday. And for most of history, religions have tried to get away from worldly things, okay? And you see this a lot in Christianity and in some of the more orthodox Christian sects that borderline on fascism. There's a real fear of the world. There's a real fear of just basic things about life, like women or menstruation. There's this, you see this, you hear this every Sunday at church. There's this like constant need to somehow turn their guru, turn Jesus into something that isn't actually human. Like human beings are born through women. And they took a symbolic meaning and tried to separate themselves from the world. Okay, so but the reality is that we live here. We live in this world. We live in the muck and the shit and the sex and the menstruation and the fuck and the beer and the traffic and internet memes. We live in all of it. Okay, so the practice of spiritual practice is not getting away from it. That's just avoidance. Okay, and that's going to lead to a whole different can of worms than indulgence, but it's sort of the same can of worms. It's just, it's two sides of the same coin: avoidance or indulgence. So real spiritual practice is not about avoidance or indulgence. It's simply taking things as they come. And if you've had the privilege to be around spiritual masters, they're not what you think they are. Okay, they're not walking on water all the time. And some shows recently have depicted, especially Jesus, in a more realistic fashion, especially in the show The Chosen, where oftentimes Jesus he's like a child, and a lot of spiritual realizers, realizers, spiritual adepts like Jesus, like Ramana Maharshi, Bhagavan Krishna, Paramahansa Yogananda, Adidas Raj, Neem Karoli Baba, to name a few. Oftentimes they're like children. They're like almost as helpless as children, and they also see the world constantly through the eyes of fascination and awe and gratitude and love bliss. They don't get caught up with stains on their shoes, or that somebody didn't say hi to them in the correct way or was angry with them, or they don't get caught up in these things. They don't withhold love out of hurt either. And they live their lives as an example to others on how to open, especially, not despite, but especially when you don't want to. And when you're around them, it's a humbling experience. It's an extremely humbling experience. And I can't see not wanting to honor the wisdom that comes from any tradition or person or beyond that, if it's true, if it helps you move, if it helps you be less a narcissistic, self-absorbed asshole, then it's good. And there is never a time to wait to love. There's never a time to just, there is never a more auspicious time to practice opening your heart and being love than now. There will never be a right time. If right now you're finding yourself stuck in traffic, at the grocery store, waiting in your car, if this is really late at night for you and you're looking at something to numb out to, that's completely understandable. And there's nothing that's going to stop you right now from breathing down love and releasing, exhaling love. There's nothing that will stop you except for you. In fact, spiritual practice will teach you that it's you that's getting in the way of you loving and nothing else. There's no there is no suffering too great that will stop you from loving except for your own patterns that you yourself have to deal with, and I myself have to deal with mine. And that is why the best thing that you can possibly do for yourself is simply take care of yourself and allow other people to take care of themselves. And that way, when you have the opportunity to practice together, that you're prepared for it. So the most loving thing that you can do is to simply take care of your body, take care of your heart, take care of your mind, take care of your spirit, so that you can be of service to somebody else who's taking care of themselves. And that way, when you practice, you can have this beautiful convergence. Now, I promised earlier on that I would talk about some of the sexier stuff. So the reason that people get into sexual yoga or sacred intimacy is, more often than not, is that their relationships are failing, or rather they're failing at relationship. And they're in enough pain, they've been feeling enough pain that they finally admit to themselves they can't do it alone, so they seek a mentor. And they begin finding out how the boy-girl stuff works, okay? And it doesn't really have anything to do with genders. You'll find out pretty quickly, which is why some men are far more radiant than women, and some women are far better at business than men. Masculine and feminine energies, or positive and negative energies, are just physics. It's just physics. It's the science of the universe and how things work, and we're not separate from them. And that's the realization that you're going to find in just these basic 101 stuff of sexual polarity that really, in a sane society, you would learn junior high and high school, okay? You would learn the basics of how we learn physics, we learn science, we learn biology, but somehow it's taught to us as if it's something separate than ourselves. It's not. Your body works as an electric machine. You are energy. You are light conducting energy. You're taking energy in, you're putting energy out. The same with your biology. There's very little that you actually control your body. Okay, I'm not like growing my hair right now, or what's left of it. I'm not deciding, oh, I think my chin hair will go gray now. Okay, I'm not deciding this. I'm not deciding what my heart rate is. I'm not deciding what my blood pressure is. In fact, the only thing that you can really control that manually, that is part of that also affects the automatic system that you have, is really your breath. So pranayama or breath work or breath meditation is really just a working with what you have to work with that will affect the rest of you. And with sexual polarity, sexual yoga, sacred intimacy, the names don't ever really matter, never did. The work that you're doing is it's a self-discovery. Now, most people, I would say men especially, come to this work from either heartbreak or a desire for wish fulfillment. Okay? But if you don't have training, then quickly your fantasy will turn to a fucking nightmare. The Burning Man orgy tent sounds really, really fun and sexy until you're right in the middle of it and you don't know what the fuck to do. Now, if you don't know what to do, I assure you that there's people in there that know exactly what to do with you. And you will get caught up suddenly feeling like a fuck doll or a sex tool for somebody else's means of raising their increasing levels of pleasure more and more. Oftentimes, some of the best teachers for younger men, and when I say younger, I mean in your 20s, are older women. And when I was 18 and 19, my girlfriend was 32 at the time. And it, for me, it just worked better. I'm not suggesting that for everybody, but it just simply worked better because I think women will understand this, and less men will understand what I'm about to say, but certainly women will understand, is it is nearly impossible for women to be with men who are less conscious than they are. It physically hurts women to even be around men who are less conscious than they are. A feminine being, her body will ache. Her heart, her breasts, her cervix, her womb will ache around a man who is less conscious than her, because she's going to feel that suffering. She's going to feel your collapse into self-contraction, into being far less than what you could be, far less than love. So there's nothing wrong with these desires. There's nothing wrong with wanting to go to the orgy tent. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But there's a big difference between a love temple and the devil's fuck tent. And the line is very, very thin. In fact, if you put 100 people in that same tent, this person is having the time of their life. This person feels like they're caught in a nightmare. The difference between that is subjective and perspective and simply point of view. And then you have some people who are basically indifferent and they're just, oh, this is happening. Let's take it back from extremes a little bit. For most people in the relationship, at some point, the sexual energy will have an ebb. It won't always flow. It won't always increase in heights. It'll dip down. This might happen around a time of a career change, having children, death in the family. Something will happen. And when you get into something like that, it can sort of neutralize the sexual polarity of the couple, and then you sort of can get stuck there without the understanding of how it works. You're just guessing. You might as well be closing your eyes and just throwing darts at the wall. Yet most of us go through life just doing just that, and then wondering why we're so frustrated. Most men at some point get tired of initiating sex, and then they wish that their spouse initiates sex without understanding how to make that happen. They fall into thinking they're part of the X-Men and they're just going to like magically superpower their way through that. And then resentment builds up, and then frustration happens, and then both people isolate because there's that resentment, and I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. It becomes a mess. It becomes an absolute mess. So the reason that people come to the work might often be a seeking from an avoidance of pain or a pursuit of pleasure, and that's completely fine. Use that seeking as your unique advantage to gain consciousness, to pursue consciousness, to stop waiting to love, to start learning how to open your heart and not be as afraid to be seen. And the truth of the matter is, I got into this work simply as a way to survive. I was in so much pain myself and had so much frustration that my desires and wishes weren't being fulfilled, that I wasn't able to figure out how to have my needs met by myself, by my partners. So I came into it both with seeking for an end of suffering and a pursuit of pleasure. And what I found was completely unexpected. If you would have told me what I would find, I would have called you a liar. There is no way I would possibly believe you. I would not have believed you. And I now understand why you have to gatekeep quite a bit. And in a way, you can't dump the whole ocean over somebody's head, especially if all they have to catch it with is a cup. So you have to, as a teacher now, I'm constantly having to be aware and feel into and be attentive to somebody's receptivity, their ability to be receptive to the teaching of how to open. Recently, a woman was opening up more fully than she had ever opened or allowed herself to be seen. She said that she felt truly alive and that she felt a connection that she had never felt. And it wasn't to a person. She wasn't saying she was feeling a connection to someone. She was saying she was feeling a connection, feeling connected in a way that she had never felt in her entire life. And that was from one session in our community. And I bring this up because this is the work that I didn't seek out to do. I sought out to heal myself with. And this was almost a decade and a half ago now. And what happens, like with anything else, I'll use a jiu-jitsu analogy, is that if you hang out doing jiu-jitsu consistently 5 days a week, after 15 years, eventually you're going to be ready to teach some stuff, whether you want to teach it or not. One day the teacher is not going to be available. And that's what happened to me. Simply my teacher got sick and said, Dylan, can you stand in for me? It wasn't a desire to teach other people. It was a desire to heal myself, to heal my heart. After 20 years in the fire service, I've seen well over 1,000 homicides and suicides. And I needed a way to heal. I needed a way to heal from that. That wasn't being provided by the fire service. It wasn't being provided by conventional medicine in any way, shape, or form. In fact, a lot of conventional medicine was actually making it worse. So it doesn't matter to me at this point if someone thinks it's weird or strange or different. It may well be, but it's no measure. It's it's no measure of success to call yourself normal in a completely insane system. So if what heals me and what's healing others and what's allowing other people to say that they've never felt a connection like that in their life, they've never felt so seen, that a message I got today was that they never knew how much they could love or how fully they could love in any moment until the sessions that we've been doing in this community. And so if that's a different way, then I'm all for different. I'm all for it. If anybody thinks that the current system is going to help you or is helping you after what we've seen with COVID, what we've seen with the opioid epidemic of billions of dollars being made by sacrificing the lives of hundreds of thousands of people that they made into addicts, then it's time for different. And part of different, I don't think, is going to be going to some ancient thing. It's going to be, we're not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater. It's going to be a blending. It's going to be a modern wisdom that uses what has worked forever. And why so many people, like recently, the Stoics are now in vogue again, which is hilarious. It would have been to them, but these aren't new or old. They're just universal. They've been around forever. The Upanishads, which is sort of like the foundational practices. We're talking to like the Bhagavad Gita here. We're talking about what Jesus was trying to bring back from India and Pakistan back to Jerusalem, back to the Jewish people, when he was trying to explain that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, meaning it's in your hands. You are the one responsible for your happiness. At the end of the day, at the end of every moment, the fact is you're responsible. And if you're unhappy, that's your fucking fault. If I'm the first one telling you this, so be it. If you have not figured it out yet, you are the one getting in the way of love. You. And me. When I'm closing, when I'm contracting, when I'm letting anger and resentment, hate, when I'm letting that get in the way of love, I am being less than love, and I am the one getting in the way. So what can we do about this? Well, just like any practice, consistency is king. And you won't do it alone. You cannot. You're not inclined to, you don't have the proclivity to, you don't have any interest in doing it yourself. If you could have, you would have. But you haven't. You need a community because people are tribal. In Sebastian Unger's book, Tribes, he talks about the necessity of returning to a state of tribalism in terms of practice of love and community. And without that community, you will not do it alone. You will talk about it, you will think about it, you will wish it away, and another 5 years, another 10 years will go by. You have not done a thing. So having a community to support your practice, this is what we're offering at the Sacred Community, is a gym, is an online gym of the heart and soul. Now, the reason I founded that is because it just wasn't there. I didn't find it anywhere else. I found parts of it. I found a part here, a piece there. But most communities doing this work, there was something that was offered like once a month. And then sometimes like the teacher wouldn't even be there. So having a community that has over 12 sessions a month, having at least, and that's minimum, at least 3 a week, it keeps you consistent. I mean, some days we do twice a day, 8 in the morning, 8 at night. You don't have to make everything, but it's available to you. Just like a jiu-jitsu gym, going into a dojo. How much are you going to get out? How much jiu-jitsu are you going to learn if you go once a month? How strong are you going to get if you go to the gym once a month? And when's the last time you went to the gym for your relationship with your spouse? Your relationship for yourself? When's the last time you went to a gym to learn how to heal your heart and heal others? When's the last time you learned? I mean, unless your high school was way cooler than mine, I don't remember there being a class on relationships, conscious communication, sexual polarity, how relationship works, how to meditate, how to do breath work. If you resonate with this at all, you know what to do. I'm sure there's a link at the bottom. You can subscribe, and I'll be putting out more videos. Putting out at least 2 a week, probably 3 a week. And they'll get better as we go. It's very different to me to simply talking to a camera, but I imagine you on the other side of it. And the you I imagine, the you I imagine is a lot like me. The you I imagine is capable, wants to help, wants to serve, capable, talented, also scared, also lacking direction, lacking leadership, hoping for leadership. For me, I went to the fire service when I was 18, 19 years old, and the guys who'd been there for 20 years, who provided me real leadership, I will never forget. I will never forget the names Whitmarsh or Moda, Wade, Lucero, Moulton, Jones, so many others. I will never forget the people who stepped up and led. And at the sacred community, I'm not going to be preaching at you. I'm not going to be Dr. Laura finger waving at you from some mountain on high. I'm simply sharing a practice with you that was shared to me by masters, that if you want to get that experience, well, you're going to have to go to a temple at 10,000 elevation and wake up every day at 5 a.m. You know, some of the masters I've learned from, they're not available to the general public without less than 5 years of training, or going through hoop after hoop after hoop for 2.5 years. And most of us don't have patience to get through the end of this entire video. So I'm not offering you to even become a student of mine. What I'm offering you is love, service, and sharing with you the practices that have helped keep me alive, help keep me sane, help bring me back from not being sane, help me bring me back from being brokenhearted. These practices, the consistency of doing them, is what allows me to stand and be seen, to be witnessed as I am, not as something that I think you need me to be, but just simply as I am. Insecurities and doubts and fears and all that good stuff to work with. So if this has resonated with you, there's a link at the bottom where you can join our community. And if you don't, that's completely fine. I'm going to put out all the information here on YouTube for free, so you can work with it on your own whenever you wish. And if you want to do these practices and work with it with me and with the community, and we have, and even if it's not with me, which is totally fine, we have wonderfully talented practitioners and facilitators. Because ultimately it's not about me, and it's not even about you, which is the beauty of this work. And so if there's a personality rub, if you don't like my haircut, if my gray beard is getting in the way of your spiritual practice, we have many facilitators. They're all wonderful. They're happy to guide you into a practice of heart opening. So with that said, I hope you'll join us. I hope you will share this with somebody who's meaningful to you, who you think would benefit from it. And like always, I wish you way more than luck. Thank you.